actually going to have a panel debate about PR and content marketing. Is it the same? Is it different? Which should be very interesting. So I'm going to give you to your host, John Bernstein.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We have our own places. We have 29 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. So I'll get started as soon as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to pick up this conversation. Oh, thanks, Adam.
It's the week. Yeah, it's not good, is it?
So, PR and content, the great divide, is the subject we're going to be talking about for the next, as I say, sort of 29 and a half minutes or so. Questions from me, and then questions from you, I hope. So this subject, clearly the context has been set by the two Roberts, which is rather nice, and we've got one of the Roberts back with us, so I suspect we will tackle that question of truth sooner rather than later.
Truthiness.
Truthiness, indeed. And there is something also around clearly brands connecting directly to their publics and the decline of traditional media, existential crisis facing PR, question mark. And we'll clearly pick up those threads from those two initial parts of today. Let me introduce the panel to you, starting from the far side, Sarah Pinch, who is Managing Director of Pinchpoint Communications and President of the CIPR, the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. Next to Sarah is Thomas Francis, who is Head of Communications at London Midlands.
Francis Thomas, but...
Francis Thomas, I apologise.
Designed to confuse.
Designed to confuse. Really sorry, really sorry.
I was trying
to work out your hand gestures. Really sorry. Francis Thomas, Head of Communications at London Midlands. Definitely got this right. Robert Rose, you've met Robert already. Chief Strategy Officer at the Content Marketing Institute. And finally, nearest to me, Adam Cranfield, who is the founder of Digital Forward, and also the founder of this very event. It was his baby last year. He's handed it over. It's in safe hands. My name is John Bernstein. I was a journalist for about 20 years. My two most recent jobs in journalism, I was the Deputy Editor and Digital Director for The New Statesman, and prior to that, I worked at ITN in the Channel 4 newsroom. I set up their multimedia department and ran that for a while. So I come from this at a slightly different perspective, I guess, from most people. PR and content, the great divide. Sarah, let's start with you. I want to get your view on the truth thing in a minute. But first of all, this great divide, what is the continuing role of PR where brands are becoming publishers and journalists are losing their jobs every hour of the day, every day of the week? Thanks for the art, by the way.
I'm a bit bored actually this morning because a lot of what I've heard it so many times. PR is alive and well, doing an absolutely fantastic job, always has. The model that Robert described of the future, that is what communications in the NHS has looked like for years. People, engagement, listening to patients and comms all sits in the same place. So, there's a bit of railway thing going on here. Railways are brilliant at doing that, have done that for years in terms of engaging with rail user groups. They're joyous. Let me tell you, I've been to more dodgy pubs in my life that I care to.
So you're bored about this conversation? You think it's entirely wrong?
I don't think it's entirely wrong. I just think we are busy. We are winning more business. We are being asked to get involved in more areas. The State of the Profession research that came out from the CIPR demonstrated that actually PR people are doing more and more and more.
On this content marketing thing, and let me quote, because I realise it's a tweetable moment, from Robert Phillips, content marketing gives PR another excuse not to get its shit together. Discuss.
We've got our shit together.
Yeah?
People need to, ask me a different question perhaps, but I am president of an institute that is confident, that is growing, that is doing a great job, that is engaging in new and exciting ways. It is all about the content, not about the process. I completely agree with this, Robert, on that. Things like this are really good, but it would be even better if half of this room was full of CEOs.
Okay.
That's the next thing for me, really.
Okay.
Is how do we, as a profession or a craft, I'm sort of not really bothered how we describe ourselves, but how do we get to those CEOs who are not interested in AVs anymore?
Okay, well, let's rehearse the message that we will give to those CEOs. What is that message that you want to give to them?
See those business objectives? Those are my objectives. Where do we start work?
Okay, and specifically around this idea of content marketing, what is the PR's role in content marketing?
So I think we've been doing it for a very, very long time. And we write stuff, we talk to people, we listen, we take the view from the outside, the view from the inside, we bring them together and we create and tell stories.
Isn't the difference, however, in public relations that there's an expectation that a lot of that stuff that you are producing, a lot of those assets are going to be mediated, maybe by the traditional media industry, but they're going to be mediated. It's not publishing directly onto your own platforms necessarily. That's the difference, isn't it?
So I think that has changed radically. You know, I've been in this game for 15 years, and before that I was a journalist for 13 years. I obviously started when I was about 10. But, you know, I think that has been evolving for a very long time. You know, we've just looked at some of those brands that are publishing their own content. I think organisations, interestingly, I think the public sector has been doing this way, way, way in advance of the private sector because it just didn't have the money that the private sector did to be able to buy itself content. So it's been publishing its own for a very, very long time. And I think there are lots of lessons that we could look at. Those organisations that we like to have a prod at and say they've been stuck in the past, and actually councils have published newspapers years and years ago. Now they've moved online and they have different ways of doing that, and they are those community officers. So I think I think this has been going on for a long time. I think there's a little bit of emperor's new clothes about some of this stuff.
So the great divide, question mark, the answer to that question is no divide. No divide at all.
I think there are divides in certain organisations, absolutely. You have a marketing department, you have a public relations or a communications department. Of course there are divides, and I think there are things within the marketing arena that comms people are not so good at. But I think we are much better together. We are much stronger together. And I think we are seeing a lot of things coming together. And, you know, the research that we did says actually PR people are getting involved in loads more stuff.
Sarah, last question to you for the moment. And it's, I saw you tweet about it when Robert mentioned the truth word. We are not in the business of truth. I hope I haven't taken that out of context. You didn't like it. Tell me why you didn't like it.
Oh, because we would chuck people out of membership for lying. I mean, it's very, you know, we have a compulsory ethics dimension now to our continuous professional development. We hear regularly, we hear complaints that are made against members who have lied.
Well, isn't the point, it's not about lying necessarily, it's about this sort of, it's about
of course
wanting to...
it's about lying.
It's just,
well, the opposite of the truth is not to tell the truth.
Fine,
that is lying.
I'll get Robert's response in a moment, but there was something that followed that, which was about, you know, this kind of wanting to believe in a version of the truth, and I can feel myself slightly coming unstuck as I speak those words. But
there is one version of the truth, which comes from the source of the truth. How you hear that and interpret that may give you, the listener, a slightly, you know, someone will make a statement. I will say, isn't it beautifully sunny? Someone will hear me say, oh, it's very hot outside. No, what I said was, it is beautifully sunny. Someone will hear me say, Sarah really likes urban landscapes. No, I said it was beautifully sunny. So there is truth, and that, you know, and public relations professionals who do not abide by the truth, we as, you know, as the only charter body for public relations professionals will chuck them out. We will call them out, and we will distance ourselves from them as far as we can get.
So for the moment, thank you very much.
I feel like I should sing a song.
Yes, exactly. Francis, just on that truth issue for the moment, I saw you nodding your head there, so clearly you're in entire agreement with Sarah.
Absolutely. I'm not frustrated this morning. I just think we're in danger of making a very simple industry sound very complicated. Because ultimately, everybody in this room should be a storyteller, and the story should be the truth about what their business is doing. And to quote your countryman, Mark Twain, if you tell the truth... Who was
the biggest liar ever. Right?
If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And so the great thing that the digital age has given us is the ability to get to the truth. So if you think you're in the business, or if you think you've got a client, or worse still, a boss who thinks your job is to tell anything other than the truth, leave. Hand in your resignation as soon as you get back to your desk this afternoon or tomorrow. It's just not worth it. You will suffer.
So also talking about this word storytelling, every time I come to an event like this, I hear this word storytelling. And I don't know what it means. Tell me what it means.
Okay, well, if you want to make it complicated, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it corporate advocacy. But basically, nobody is going to tell your story for you. Nobody is going to tell people that you're the best improved train company, accountancy firm. No one's going to do that for you. So that's why we get employed, to tell those stories, okay? And there are urban myths, as Sarah rightly said. We all hear things differently. And so part of our job is to police that conversation, monitor that conversation, and step in occasionally and say, actually, it's like this, not like this. So we debunk the stories that are out there. I often tell people when they come into the PR industry, our job is to battle ignorance. Because journalists can't hurt you, people can't hurt you, but their ignorance can. And the only way you battle ignorance is by providing information. So we defeat ignorance by telling the company's story. And we prioritize different parts of that story depending on where we are in our current life cycle. So if you're the worst performing, you need to tell people what you're doing to put it right. If you're the best performing, you tell people what you've done to put it right and what you're going to do next to make it even better.
It sounds like a marvellous industry. Why does it feature so lowly when we look at all this trust or distrust people have in professions?
Oh, because the worst thing we ever do is to tell the world we exist. We tell, and you know, I could mention some political parties that really ruined it for our industry sort of 10, 15 years ago by telling people how good they were at PR. Once you start telling people that you're out there trying to persuade people to think differently, then you're going to be treated with suspicion and derision, which is why I like the words storytelling, or if I'm talking to people who think they're a bit clever, I talk about corporate advocacy, because you wouldn't go into a legal court without preparation and having your story straight. So why would you go into the court of public opinion having not prepared and consulted some professionals?
Let's pick up this, before we move on, just this content marketing thing specifically. The great divide between PR and content. Clearly you don't believe that. But I put the same question I put to Sarah, that PR does something slightly different in lots of instances. Certainly if the P in PR is around press relations, for example, it gets mediated. You're providing the assets and then they get used.
I don't care. In fact, I prefer, and I'll give you a real example of this, where we were supposed to be facing a rail strike 3 weeks ago. I did tons and tons of TV interviews that never made it to air because we were doing the pre-records in the morning, and then the rail strike got called off. So it never made it to air. But the best line I had was, tomorrow if the rail strike goes ahead, rail travel will be difficult for some people and impossible for most. Now, the journalist pinched that and used it as his tagline to close the piece. And he said, did you mind me doing that? I said, I'd much sooner you say it than me say it. My life has been putting words into other people's mouths, because if somebody else says it, it's so much more powerful.
What was the line again?
Tomorrow, if the rail strike goes ahead, rail travel will be difficult for some people and impossible for most.
Right.
Because only about 10% of the trains would have run. So for most people, forget it. It wouldn't have been worth even trying.
Thank you very much for the moments. Robert, now is your opportunity. So I've seen it all over Twitter.
Gracious.
Yeah. So have I taken your quote out of context? I suspect most people in this audience, maybe not most people, a lot of people in this audience think I haven't. We are not in the business of truth. Defend yourself, man.
You shoved me in the center, too.
We're a nice lot, really.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's been clear. Look, I think that great line from Star Wars, only a Sith deals in absolutes. I think one of the challenges here is that we have this, there's a false dichotomy being created here, which is that by saying that we're not in the business of the truth, I'm suggesting that we're all liars. And that we're...
And that's absolutely what Sarah was saying.
I quite clearly heard that, yeah. And so so the difference is not between a truth and a lie. The difference is between a truth and a story. And advocating, so none of us would stand up to being completely transparent. If the Sony hack provided any illumination on that, then none of us would stand up to the scrutiny of a complete transparent, look if we were all completely truthful 100% of the time. None of us, certainly none of our companies would. And so as the job of corporate advocate or as the job of a marketing person, it is our job to, and you said it well, prioritize and select the things that we choose to communicate. And so I'm not suggesting that we are in the business of lying. I'm suggesting that we are in the business of telling stories, and that in order to create value for our constituents, whether that constituent is a customer or a press or an analyst or someone, this is not what we've been hired to do. Now, we can debate the ethics of that. We can debate the ethics of whether that should exist in a company or whether that company should be completely transparent 100% of the time and marketing shouldn't exist, and there are plenty of things to talk about there. But it's not what the business is in business to do. The business is in business to make money. And Coca-Cola is certainly not going to make any money by coming out and saying, hey, guess what? We make sugar water that makes people fat.
Well, but hold that thought for a second. So there's the counter-argument, lucidly put, that in the art of persuasion...
Thanks for that.
No, it was. I mean, I tried to make the argument...
I was trying for such a tight argument, and loosely put.
Lucid.
I said lucid.
Oh, lucidly put. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We're getting on really well.
Yeah,
you and I, Robert.
Thank you.
This is going so well.
Yeah.
But let's just get a response from first from Sarah to that argument, that in the art of persuasion, you pick and choose. You pick and choose. You prioritise. Sarah.
So there's a great difference between prioritisation and picking and choosing.
What's the difference?
So prioritisation is, here's 10 things, I'll put them in order, I'm going to say them all. Picking and choosing is, here are 10 things, I'm not going to say 5 of them.
So you're saying that there's never omission? There's always admission, surely.
I think, of course there is. There are 35 things I'd like to say now, and I'm not going to say them all.
So omission means picking and choosing, right?
So, no. Picking and choosing gives the impression that I have premeditated. I have sat down and said, these are the 10 things, those 5, oh, that's not very palatable, I'm not going to say those. And what I would say is, fine, but you'll be found out. We all know that Coca-Cola makes you fat. That's why we've got massive child obesity problems. It is now banned in every school in the UK. You cannot buy any fizzy drinks in any school in this country. Right, so we know, we found out.
Okay, same point to you, Francis.
Okay, it's not about lying. I think anyone who's been on a media course will remember that whole address the issues. But then it's how much of your time do you spend talking about the weakness in your business, and how much do you talk about the things you're going to do to put it right, and the things that you're going to do to make it even better.
Therefore, you're prioritising.
So
right?
it's about so Sarah's absolutely right. It is about prioritisation. So you have to address your weaknesses, of course you do, but you don't live there. You move forward. Your job is to move the conversation on, to move the agenda on. Somebody very wisely once said, PR really only has 2 tools: to make something smaller or to make something look bigger. And very often, what we do to make things look bigger, we bring the future forward. Quite an apt link to today's theme. That often we say, yeah, you can tell me how bad we were 2 years ago. I can tell you we're okay today, and I can tell you where we're going to be in 2 years' time. So I've addressed the issue. I've told you. I've acknowledged we were bad 2 years ago. My company was the worst performing train company in the country 2 years ago. We had to fix it. I walked in when we were at the lowest point. Now we're doing okay. And in 12 months' time, we're going to be even better. And that dialogue has never changed. Always address the weakness, but move the agenda forward.
Okay. Adam, bring you into the conversation. Views on this part of the argument?
Very interesting, but I'm not sure that content marketers or PR people, it's not about whether they're lying or not. I think that if we want to get into what the difference is between PR and content marketing, and whether PR professionals and agencies need to change the way they work to take advantage of these opportunities that Robert went through, I think that...
Give me some concrete examples, perhaps, of content being used and where PR comes into it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's lots going around in my head about this. I mean, it wasn't last year, the year that the PR agency won Cannes Grand Prix for the first time a PR agent. Tell me if I'm going wildly wrong here, but the Chipotle campaign, it's the Scarecrow, storytelling. It's an advert, isn't it? It's a video, which was beautiful. I wrote a blog post when I was head of marketing for my news desk last year, saying that, you know, all this talk about storytelling. I went to a PR Moment conference talking about storytelling, and I was asking whether it's actually, do people want the truth or the sort of true story, the inside look at the company or the organization, or do they want this kind of attractive fiction that the Chipotle video portrays? And I'm not, of course, there was lots of sort of pure media relations stuff that went on around that as well, which possibly factored into why they won the Grand Prix for that. I think one example I'm seeing a lot, which is, I think, important for everyone here, is that you get this, let's talk about video content a bit. You get this video content, obviously Chipotle was one example, and what seems to happen now is that a brand will create a piece of video content which may be mildly interesting, mildly exciting, mildly amusing, and then it will get digital media coverage. So it's appearing in, you know, the Mirror online or the Mail online or Mashable or whatever your favorite, BuzzFeed. You know, maybe BuzzFeed actually created the video in the first place, but it's everywhere. And I think the reason it's everywhere is because it serves both parties. So the media companies are after advertising impressions themselves and clicks. So it's in their interest to say, watch this amazing video from, and yeah, I've got tons of examples of specific companies that have done it recently. I'm sure you've all seen lots that you love or loathe as well. But that's an interesting form of modern digital media relations. Create the piece of content, sell it in to all of the media properties. They win because they get millions and millions of clicks, and the brand wins because everyone sees their video, which is kind of an attractive fiction in my view.
And is PR
videos
playing in this whole dance that we're talking about?
I don't know. I think it's in everyone's going to. You know, one thing I have learnt from you know the last few years of really immersing myself in the PR world is that, you know, the PR role and the comms role varies a lot depending where you work. What you're doing, what all you guys are actually doing every day, varies a lot depending on where you work. So I think you have to look at each case and say, but I welcome you guys sort of saying what the role is.
You think PR does play in this scenario?
I think it does. I mean, get on a train from Coventry to Wolverhampton the morning after, is it called the Super Bowl or something? You have this big commercial break in the middle of a football game where you sell bowls of soup in America. And everyone is talking about the commercials that were put on in the middle of this American football game. Well, yes, the marketeers may have created that content, but who engineered the conversations? Because clearly, most of those people on the train between Coventry and Wolverhampton were not staying up till 4 in the morning to watch an American football game. But they do know that Nike did something, or, you know, David Beckham's underpants exploded at half-time. So they're having those conversations because the PR people, as we have always done, have taken some content from the marketing department and turned it into a story that gets people talking.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I've got loads more questions, but I'm aware that we are about 6 minutes before we have to wrap this thing up. Just give me a sense, any questions out there? Show of hands for questions. Okay, there are quite a few. So what I suggest we do is we go out. There's a question in the third row here. If you just wait for the mic and introduce yourself and keep it as short as you can.
Okay, sure. Hi, John Brown from Hotwire. I was just wondering, do you think we're doing ourselves a disservice by spending half a conference talking about a 1990s debate around content and trust? And shall we start talking about the future?
Yes, please.
Before you let go of the mic, what is it that you think we should be talking about? What is this future?
I don't know. I bought the ticket.
Thank you very much. That is a tweetable moment. Thank you. Other hands, please. There was a hand somewhere up there I saw. Yes, if you just take it to the top of the stairs, that guy just there. Oh, there's a race. Again, if you just introduce yourself and...
Sure. Hi there. My name's Simon Corbett. I'm from Jargon PR. We're a 14-person tech and corporate agency, and the majority of our clients and new business leads we get seem to be very clear on they're looking for a PR and content creation agency. So my question is, do you think we're all getting ourselves a bit kind of confused and kind of blowing this all out of proportion when the majority of what we see on a day-to-day basis is clients that know exactly what they want and understand how PR and content creation fits into what they're doing.
Thank you very much. Clients know what they want. That's one to discuss as well. I'll take one more question. I've got a feeling that by the time we've been across the panel, we'll be there. The lady just there, please.
Hello, I'm Sarah Williams-Robbins from A&E Networks, the TV company, History Channel. You might have heard of that. Question, well, really for Sarah, but for anyone else, really. Do you think part of this problem, I say problem, inverted commas, is what we call ourselves? It's almost like this is kind of creating a divide, but there is massive crossover. Are we, maybe there's time to discuss it in detail, but are we actually exacerbating the problem by calling ourselves one discipline over another?
Perfect. Great question. We've got about 4 minutes, so a minute each on those 3 questions, slightly less. Sarah's question is part of the problem about what we call ourselves. We had a question from Simon about overplaying this, over-confusing this, and actually the clients actually do know what they want. And then John started off by saying we shouldn't be rehearsing the arguments of the 90s, we should be moving on. He doesn't know what we should be talking about, but he's paid the ticket, so we should know what we're talking about. I'm a journalist, I have absolutely no idea what's going on. So that's my get out of jail free card, but I'm hoping that one of you knows the answer to that question. So Sarah, start where you choose.
I'll try and answer Sarah's question. One of the great privileges of being involved in the Chartered Institute of Public Relations is some of the people you get to meet. And one of my lifelong heroes is a guy called Travis Healey, who is about 560. It's about 93. And he is the only surviving founding father of the Institute of Public Relations. He also lives quite close to me, so we meet for lunch. His brain is absolutely as sharp as it was on the day that he sat down with government after the Second World War, and they said, we need some help. This country is in pieces, it doesn't know where it's going, we need better stories, we need more content, they obviously didn't use those words, we need different platforms, we need to get to people. And Tim and his mate said, I tell you what we'll do, we'll set up the Institute of Public Relations. Since then, our name has been trampled through the mud in all sorts of different ways and got confused. But if we go back, sorry John, even further than the 90s, but back to the origins of what we are about, it is about enabling people to understand where they are, where they live, what's going on, how they can improve their lives, how they can be better, how they can get better access to services, to drinks that make them fat, to make choices. That's what we're about. And I think we either get on with it, which I think is probably what most of us do when we're not sat in the darkest room in London on the sunniest day in the calendar. But, and what we call ourselves, I'm not particularly bothered about that. I think it's what we do. You only need to look at the awards that came out of the Excellence Awards, a couple of weeks ago, and it is amazing. There were awards on that night where people's lives had been saved because of what public relations can do.
Sarah, thank you very much. I'm just conscious of the time, please.
Very briefly, changing your name all the time is a sign of weakness. We should stick to what we are. We're PR people. Number 2, what is the future? The future is we should remember what we're here to do, and that is to tell the stories on behalf of our employers and our clients, and that we should be looking at content simply as a tool, like we've looked at everything else from the birth of the internet to the invention of the typewriter to email. It's just a tool. Let's just use it, embrace it, and do what we're good at. Clients who know what they want worry me a little bit, but it's okay if they give you the freedom to do what you're good at, and that's the key. So win the confidence of the client to say, I'm good at this, now just let me get on and find the assets within the business to tell your story.
Robert.
So I'll try and answer all 3 in context. And your first mistake was to buy a ticket and assume we knew what the hell we were talking about. That's lying. Yeah. Hello.
Touche.
Hello. What I'll say is this: is that so I will not pretend for a moment to understand the market here as I understand it in the States. I will tell you. My truth, whether it's sunny or hot, is in the States, PR and corporate communications is in a world of hurt. They are siloed off from a large part of the organization, most of the organizations, and they are relegated in many times to just pushing out press releases. And I believe that PR and corporate communications can be the strategic storyteller of the business. In the States, it's not true. So it may be true here, but it is not true in the States. And I believe that when we're talking about the evolution of this, the future of this, what we're talking about is the creation of valuable content to the consumer that goes beyond the product or service that the company puts into the marketplace. That means creating value that is different. It's a new muscle for most businesses to exercise. The idea that the clients that we work for know what that is, in my experience, rare. When you ask the client what they want, they will tell you a faster horse, and we need to be delivering them automobiles. And so I believe that PR and corporate communications can be a huge leader in that. I don't see it in the States, and maybe it's figured out here, but I don't see it where I live.
Robert, thank you very much. Adam, finally.
Okay, very quickly, I'll just pick John then. Sorry you're so disappointed with the wisdom so far, but I think that the sort of future element of it is basically digital. So it's about understanding the digital channels and digital content. And I mean, you know, you want to come today and learn about some examples, and I'm sure many of you know these kind of ones. I think the stuff that kind of captures it is things like, for example, Squarespace, the small business website building company that's massive now. Yes, it's integrated comms. So yes, there's a Super Bowl spot. Yes, it's Jeff Bridges reading sleeping tapes, which is just creative, weird, and wonderful. Yes, you can go to a website and download those sleeping tapes and see if they're effective for you. It's multi-channel, it's multimedia, it's digital. It's probably many of you tried this Microsoft when they had the Analyze Your Age. You know, if Microsoft and Google and Apple are in this huge battle to be seen as the innovative company taking us into the next stage of digital, the fact that most people in this room probably saw the Guess Your Age thing, put your photo in there, it's going to tell you how old you are, this kind of stuff. What is that? That's integrated communications. I don't know what the roles of the individuals were behind that. It was definitely written about, so definitely there was an old school media relations element to it. There's a social media element, and yeah, the truth of all this is about multi-channel, it's about social, it's about search, and it's about the people, the agencies or the professionals who understand all of that stuff and can bring it together. It's not about silos and individual departments. So yeah, the labels don't really matter. But I think to pick up the point at the back really quickly, I think that, you know, yes, the client, I as a head of marketing might have known what I wanted when I went out there, but the best agencies would not accept that. They would say, what is your strategy? Sorry, what is your objective? And then what can we do? And maybe not all agencies and not all individuals actually can do everything. So, you know, you need to be speaking to the right people.
Adam, thank you very much. Robert, Francis, Sarah, thank you all very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.